The ship's boarding ramp shook with a deep metallic sound, and everyone waiting outside froze. No one knew what caused it. A few people whispered that maybe something broke on the transport, maybe something dangerous. The air felt heavy, like something was watching the crowd. Rylan, the young human mechanic, stepped forward slowly, keeping his repair case close. He had been called at the last minute to fly to the Hellion station for urgent work, but now he felt something strange in the air, something he could not name. When he walked into the boarding gate, he noticed the security officers standing stiff, their eyes sharp. They were not looking at humans. They were watching something bigger. Rylan looked in the same direction and saw a massive figure moving slowly toward the ship. At first he thought it was a large armored crate. But then it exhaled and warm mist filled the cold air. It was a dragon. The dragon's scales were faded and cracked, with long scars running across his body like old battle lines. His name was Therox, a veteran from a war long over but never forgotten. The old dragon tried to walk with pride, but his wings hung low, and his steps trembled slightly. People moved away as he approached, some in fear, some in discomfort. Dragons rarely traveled with humans, and when they did, it was always a big event. But this dragon did not look like a symbol of power. He looked tired, almost broken. Rylan watched silently as Therox reached the boarding door. The dragon paused, glancing at the long line of passengers still entering. His eyes were sharp but lonely, like someone used to being avoided. The ship's crew bowed their heads with respect but kept their distance. Therox nodded once and walked inside. Rylan stepped in behind him. The inside of the transport was bright and clean, but tension hung in the air. Passengers sat stiffly, whispering as the dragon tried to move toward the first-class cabins. His large body brushed against seats and metal rails. A child began to cry softly. A few adults looked annoyed, pretending not to stare. Rylan could see that Therox struggled. His old injuries made it hard for him to sit properly. The first-class seat assigned to him was wide, but not wide enough for a dragon with damaged wings. The metal armrests pressed against his scales and he winced slightly. No one moved to help. They only watched. Then the ship's auto voice announced, "Passenger seat adjustment limits reached. Comfort accommodation unavailable." Therox lowered his head. For a moment he looked small despite his size, like he did not belong anywhere. Rylan felt something twist inside him. He understood machines, but he also understood pain. He stepped forward without thinking. "My seat is standard class," Rylan said quietly. "But I can manage anywhere. Take mine." The people around them stared in shock. A few whispered again. No one expected a human mechanic, someone young and ordinary, to give up a first-class seat to a dragon. Even the crew paused. Therox lifted his eyes slowly. They glowed faintly, showing surprise that he tried to hide. "Human," he said in a calm, deep voice, "this is not required." "I know," Rylan answered. "But it's fine. You need it more than I do." There was a long pause. The tension in the cabin grew heavy. Therox studied him carefully, as if trying to understand why a human would be kind to him. An old warrior people feared, a creature many avoided. Finally the dragon nodded. "Then I accept." Rylan smiled a little. The crew quickly moved him to a cramped seat in the back, right beside the cargo divider. It was small and noisy. But Rylan did not complain. He put on his seat belt and rested back, ready for the long flight. The ship's engines hummed, preparing for takeoff. The cabin lights dimmed for launch mode. Everyone settled, though the air still felt thick. From his place, Rylan could see just a bit of Therox up front, sitting more comfortably now, though still stiff with age. The dragon looked forward, but once, just once, he turned slightly and glanced back at the mechanic. It was not a look of pride or superiority. It was something else, something like respect. Then the ship lifted off the ground. But the moment it rose, the engines made a strange sound, low and uneven. A vibration passed through the cabin. People sat up straight. The lights flickered for half a second. Rylan frowned. He knew how a stable engine sounded, and this was not stable. He tightened his seatbelt and listened carefully. Something was wrong. Something deep in the ship's core. And whatever it was only the beginning. The ship shook again, stronger this time, and everyone went silent. A few passengers grabbed their armrests. The lights flickered once more, and a soft alarm beeped somewhere inside the walls. Rylan sat up straight in his cramped seat, listening closely. He knew that sound. It was not a normal vibration, not random turbulence. Something inside the engine core was struggling, like a machine trying to breathe but failing. Most passengers didn't understand the danger yet, but Therox did. The old dragon's head lifted slowly and his eyes narrowed. His instincts were sharp, built over many battles. He felt the shift in air pressure. He felt the wrong rhythm in the engines. His tail moved slightly, a sign of warning. The cabin screen suddenly activated with a soft chime. A calm voice spoke, "Attention passengers. Minor engine imbalance detected. Flight remains stable. Please stay seated." People relaxed a little, trusting the voice, but Rylan knew the system well enough. When the system used the word minor, it usually meant not minor but still under study. He unbuckled his seatbelt, ignoring the rule to stay seated. He reached under the seat and pulled out his small mechanic scanner. He turned it on, holding it low so no one noticed too much. The device flashed red. Rylan's chest tightened. Red meant dangerous. Red meant something inside the engine core was overheating at a speed faster than normal safety decay. If not fixed soon, it could lead to a chain reaction. And chain reactions were never small. He stood up. A crew member noticed and gave him a sharp look. "Sir, please sit down." Rylan shook his head. "I'm a certified mechanic. I need to talk to your engineer now." Before the crew member could respond, the ship jolted again, harder this time. This time people screamed. Drink spilled. A bag fell from an overhead shelf. The ship dipped to one side and steadied again, but everyone now understood that something was very wrong. Even the comm system finally changed its tone. "Warning. Engine heat levels rising. Stand by." Therox growled low, the sound deep and old, a warrior's instinct rising. His wings shifted, brushing the walls. Passengers near him leaned away in fear, but he ignored them. His sharp eyes locked on Rylan at the back. He saw the human scanner. He understood. Rylan pushed forward through the narrow aisle. "Your engineer needs help," he told the crew member. "Right now." The crew member hesitated, torn between protocol and the rising panic around them. The ship jolted again. That was enough. The crew member turned and led Rylan toward the front section. But when they reached the small engineering access door, it refused to open. The lock light blinked red. Rylan frowned and knelt to check the manual release. It was jammed. The heat inside must have distorted the mechanism. Behind him, Therox slowly rose from his seat. Passengers gasped as the dragon stood to his full size, wings half open, head almost touching the ceiling. The crew tensed, unsure what he would do. Therox stepped forward and lowered his head toward Rylan. "The door is too small for me," he said quietly. "But tell me what must be done." Rylan hesitated. Talking to a dragon was not something a mechanic did every day. But there was no time for fear. "We need to reach the engine core. But the heat might be melting the access points. If it spreads to the main frame, the engine will fail. And the ship will fall," Therox finished. Rylan nodded. The dragon looked at the door and then at the mechanic. "Stand back." Before the crew could yell, Therox pressed his claws against the metal. He did not slash. He applied slow, carefully measured pressure. The metal bent with a loud groan. The passengers shrank into their seats as sparks fell. With one more steady push, the door twisted open. Rylan rushed inside. The narrow engineering corridor was hot, too hot. The air was thick and the emergency lights glowed orange. He reached the core panel and scanned again. The numbers were worse now. Something inside was consuming energy too fast, pushing the engine into overload. He shouted back, "The stabilizer is cracked. The core can't balance heat anymore." Therox forced his massive head through the opening, his eyes glowing faintly. "Tell me how to help." Rylan worked quickly, hands shaking from the heat. "The core needs time. If someone can hold the pressure valve steady, the engine won't burst. But it requires strength. A lot of strength." "Then I will hold it," the dragon said. Rylan stared at him. The valve was built for emergency strength tests, not for living beings. "It will burn your claws," he said. "It will hurt." The dragon looked calm. "I have walked through fire before." Rylan nodded once. There was no time to argue. Therox reached inside, placing one massive claw on the pressure valve. Rylan grabbed the manual override and pulled. The valve jerked open, fighting back with violent force. Therox grunted as heat shot through his scales, but he held firm. The ship shook once again, but this time the tremor steadied quickly. Rylan checked his scanner. The red bars were dropping. Slowly. Carefully. The dragon was holding the engine together with nothing but strength and will. Passengers watched from the cabin, silent and terrified, as the old war dragon saved them all. And in that moment, none of them saw him as a monster. They saw a hero. The engine room lights flickered again, and for a moment everything went dark. The only glow came from the hot metal around the valve and the faint shine of Therox's scales. Rylan froze, scanning wildly, afraid the engine had failed again. But the numbers on his device held steady. The darkness was only a power dip, not a full loss. Still, the room felt smaller and hotter. The air tasted like metal. The ship groaned like a tired beast fighting to stay alive. Therox kept his claw locked on the valve, holding it in place with steady strength. Rylan could see the dragon's muscles tighten as waves of pressure pushed back. The old warrior was breathing slowly, carefully, like someone who had practiced this kind of pain long ago. Even in the dim light, Rylan saw burn marks forming under the scales. "You don't have to hold it that hard," Rylan said softly as he worked on another panel beside him. "I can fix the stabilizer faster if you shift the pressure a little." Therox didn't move his head, but his voice rumbled low. "If I loosen my grip even for a moment, the valve will jump. The pressure will spike again." Rylan swallowed. "I know. I'm just saying, this is hurting you." Therox breathed out, a short warm gust. "Pain is not new to me, mechanic. But trust is." Rylan didn't expect that answer. Caught him off guard. For a moment he couldn't think of anything to say. He tightened a bolt on the stabilizer and checked the next reading. The numbers were still high, but they were falling in small steps. Behind him, the ship shook again. This one was lighter, but the passengers screamed anyway. Rylan heard the fear through the walls. He worked faster. Minutes passed. The heat continued to rise. Sweat rolled down Rylan's face. His hands trembled from the hot metal he kept touching. His fingertips ached. He felt tired, but he didn't stop. Neither did Therox. The dragon stayed locked in place, holding the valve as if it were part of his body. Every few seconds he breathed deeply, grounding himself. Rylan noticed that even though the dragon stood strong, his wings twitched softly, betraying the pain he refused to show. "Why were you traveling alone?" Rylan finally asked while tightening the final stabilizer bolt. He didn't know why he asked. Maybe it was the darkness. Maybe the heavy silence between them needed a voice. Therox didn't answer at first. Then his deep voice rolled through the cramped room. "My war is over. My years of service are done. Dragons like me, we are not needed anymore." Rylan looked up. "That doesn't sound right." "It is truth," Therox replied. "Young dragons fly now. Strong dragons. They believe I am slow. They believe I am weak. So they let me travel alone." Rylan felt a sharp twist in his chest. "You're not weak," he said. "You're holding a starship engine together with your hands." Therox huffed a tired laugh. "Perhaps." The lights flickered again, and this time they returned brighter. The emergency system stabilized. Rylan checked the scanner. The numbers were yellow now, no longer red. The stabilizer was responding. Slowly the ship was healing. "You're doing great," Rylan said. "Just a little longer." Therox shifted slightly, winced but didn't move off the valve. "Then hurry. My claws will melt soon." Rylan worked faster. He reached into the final panel, rewiring the core's coolant line. The tube was cracked, leaking heat. He cut the damaged part and replaced it with a small spare he kept in his repair pouch. It wasn't perfect, but it would last long enough for a landing. As he locked the panel shut, the engine's deep hum settled into a steady rhythm. The ship stopped shaking. The floor felt stable again. Rylan knew it was working. He stood and wiped sweat from his face. "You can release it now." Therox slowly opened his claw. The valve stayed in place this time. The engine remained steady. The danger was fading. The dragon breathed out in relief and stepped back, but his legs shook under him. Rylan rushed forward, catching the dragon's forearm instinctively. The gesture was small compared to the dragon's size, but Therox didn't laugh or push him away. Instead, he lowered himself slowly onto the metal floor, taking short breaths. Rylan sat beside him. Both were silent for a moment. Just breathing. Just resting. The crew arrived a minute later, rushing in with wide eyes, but they stopped when they saw the scene. Rylan sitting next to a giant dragon in the dark, both exhausted but calm. No one spoke. No one knew what to say. Therox finally lifted his head. "You have my respect, mechanic." Rylan smiled tiredly. "You earned mine first." The dragon lowered his massive wings slightly, not as a threat but as a gesture of trust. Rylan understood. Slowly, carefully, he rested his hand on the dragon's warm scales. For the first time since the engine died, the room didn't feel like a place of danger. It felt like a place where two strangers had become something closer, partners in survival. And somewhere deep in the ship, the passengers sat silently, unaware that trust between a human and a dragon had just saved every single one of them. The calm inside the engine room didn't last long. Just as Rylan and Therox caught their breath, The ship's alarm suddenly screamed through every wall. A sharp red light flashed above them, turning the room into a warning chamber. Rylan jumped to his feet, his heart pounding. He checked his scanner, hoping it was a mistake. It wasn't. A new alert popped up on the screen, one he hoped he'd never see. Core temperature rising again, he whispered. But how? I fixed everything. Therox pushed himself upright, though his legs shook from the earlier strain. Is the engine failing? No, Rylan said, fingers flying over the controls. This isn't coming from the core. It's coming from outside the engine. Something is hitting the ship. As if answering him, a thunderous impact shook the transport. The metal walls groaned. The lights flickered again. Dust rained from the ceiling. Passengers screamed in panic. The crew rushed into the engine room. The captain's voice cracked as she said, "We're under attack by debris from a broken satellite. Hundreds of fragments. They're hitting us from the front. We don't have shields strong enough to take it." Rylan felt cold fear spread through his chest. "We can't keep flying like this. We can't turn around," the captain said. "We can't dodge everything. If the wrong piece hits the cockpit, we're done." Therox took a deep breath and lowered his head. "What is needed?" The captain hesitated. Her eyes flicked between the human and the dragon. She didn't want to say it. Rylan stepped forward. "Tell us." The captain swallowed hard. "Someone must go to the nose of the ship. Manually stabilize the shield generator. If someone strengthens the shield from outside the main controls, the ship can push through the debris cloud." Rylan stared at her. That area was small, freezing cold, and dangerously close to the outer hull. Anyone who went there risked being thrown into space if the ship took another hit. "And there is more," the captain said quietly. "It must be done manually because the auto system is jammed. And the only way to reach the right panel is through the maintenance hatch. It is too small for a crew member with armor." Rylan understood immediately. "I'll go." Therox growled, a deep, rumbling sound. "You can't. You are too fragile for the outer pressure." "I'm the only one who knows the system well enough," Rylan insisted. "I can fix the shield control faster than anyone else." A new impact slammed into the ship. The lights flickered so hard that for a second the engine room went black. When they returned, the captain steadied herself against the wall. "We don't have time," she said. "Whoever goes must go now." Rylan turned to leave, but a massive claw blocked his path. Therox lowered his head, staring directly at him. "You saved the engine," the dragon said softly. "You saved the ship once. Now it is my turn." "You can't fit in the hatch," Rylan argued. "It's too small." Therox's eyes narrowed slightly. "There is more than one way to protect a ship." Before Rylan could ask what he meant, another violent crash hit the transport. Everyone stumbled. A warning message blared through the speakers: "Forward shields at 30%. Rylan grabbed Therox's arm. "We don't have time for another plan." Therox leaned down, his voice calm and deep. "This is not another plan. This is the only way." Without hesitation, the dragon turned and pushed through the doorway, ignoring the captain's shouts. His scales scraped the metal walls as he forced himself through the tight corridor toward the front of the ship. Rylan ran after him. "Therox, stop. You'll get crushed out there." The dragon did not turn back. "I have seen death before," he said. "But I will not let it take you. Or anyone on this ship." He reached the front airlock. The crew tried to stop him, but he pushed past them easily. His injured wings dragged behind him, still burned from holding the valve earlier. Rylan reached the airlock just as Therox pressed the emergency override. The heavy door slid open. "You can't go out," Rylan yelled. "There's no protection out there." Therox looked back at him one last time. "There is something humans taught me today. Courage does not come from strength. It comes from choice." The wind roared as the outer hatch opened. The force pulled at them, but the dragon braced himself. He stepped into the airlock chamber, his massive form filling the entire space. "Therox, please. There must be another way." The dragon closed his eyes for a moment. "There is not." The final door opened. Cold, sharp wind blasted through the corridor. The dragon launched himself into the chaos outside the ship, wings fighting against the crushing force of space debris. The crew stared, stunned. Rylan fell to his knees. The captain whispered, "What is he doing?" Rylan lifted his head, eyes wide with fear and awe. "He's placing himself between the debris and the ship," he said softly. "He's using his body as the shield." A loud crash echoed from the hull. Then another. Then another. The dragon roared in pain, but the ship stabilized. The debris struck him instead of the cockpit. Therox had become their last-second shield, their last-second hope, and their last-second hero.
The ship broke free from the debris cloud with one final shake, then everything went still. No more impacts. No more alarms. Only the deep, steady hum of engines returning to normal. The lights blinked back to full brightness, and the emergency warnings turned from flashing red to quiet blue. For the first time since the disaster began, the passengers felt safe enough to breathe. But Rylan didn't feel safe. He ran down the corridor, stumbling over loose panels and shaking railings, until he reached the front observation window. The captain and the other crew members were already there, staring out in silence. Their faces were pale, shocked, and filled with something close to grief. Rylan pushed between them. "Move, I need to see." They stepped aside. Outside the ship floated a massive figure, drifting slowly in space. Therox. His wings were torn. His scales were cracked. Many pieces of metal debris were stuck in his armor-like body. He looked like a warrior carved from stone, frozen in the aftermath of battle. But he wasn't dead. His body twitched, small, but alive. Rylan exhaled, relief flooding his chest so fast he had to grip the window to keep from falling. "He's alive," he whispered. "He's still alive." The captain placed a hand on his shoulder. "We're sending rescue drones. But no dragon has ever shielded a ship like that. Not in any war. Not in any record." Rylan wiped sweat from his forehead. He didn't do it because he was a soldier. He did it because he chose to. The rescue drones flew out, small and bright against the dark stars. They wrapped metal arms around Therox's large body, guiding him toward the ship's hold. When the airlock doors finally closed behind him, the entire ship stayed silent, waiting. Minutes later, when the medical crew lowered Therox onto the reinforced deck, people gathered around, passengers, officers, even those who had been afraid of him earlier. They stared at the injured dragon, unsure whether they should step closer or stay back. Rylan didn't hesitate. He ran through the crowd and knelt beside the dragon. He placed his hand gently on the warm, cracked scales. "Therox," he asked softly, "can you hear me?" The dragon's eyes opened slowly, glowing faint like embers. He looked at Rylan, tired but alive. "You are safe," he murmured. Rylan shook his head. "Because of you." Around them, the passengers watched silently. Some wiped tears from their eyes. Some lowered their heads. For the first time, none of them feared him. None of them whispered. None of them hid their children. One young boy stepped forward, holding a blanket. His mother tried to stop him, but he walked right up to the dragon and gently placed the blanket over one of Therox's injured wings. Rylan smiled softly. "See? They're not afraid anymore." Therox let out a weak breath, something like a tired laugh. "Respect is a strange thing, human. You cannot demand it. You must earn it. And you earned it today," Rylan said. "Every bit of it." The captain stepped closer, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Therox of Helion Fleet, on behalf of every soul on this ship, we thank you. You have done something no warrior has ever done." Therox shifted weakly. "I did not do it as a warrior." Rylan looked at him. "Then why?" The dragon met his eyes. "Because you showed me kindness. Because you gave me your seat, when no one else would give me their trust." The words hit Rylan deep. He lowered his head, unable to speak. Then something unexpected happened. Passengers stepped forward one by one. Some touched the dragon's claws gently. Others bowed. A few simply whispered their thanks. The entire room seemed to move around Therox like a wave of gratitude. The dragon closed his eyes, overwhelmed. Later, when the ship finally landed at Helion Station, the docking bay was crowded with officials, medics, and reporters. They expected a routine landing. Instead, they saw a heavily injured war dragon being carried out by drones and a young human mechanic walking beside him. A reporter asked, "Rylan, is it true this dragon saved the entire ship?" Rylan nodded. "Yes. And he didn't do it because he had to. He did it because he cared." Therox's tail twitched slightly. "Do not make me sound too gentle," he whispered. Rylan laughed. "Okay, he did it because he's stubborn." The crowd laughed, easing the tension. The head of the station stepped forward. Tharax, once the most feared veteran of the Hellion Wars, today you showed a different kind of strength. A strength that protects instead of destroys. For this, we honor you. A medal, a massive one made for large species, was placed near the dragon's chest. But Tharax only looked at Rylan. Human, he said quietly. In my long life, I have fought many battles. But today, the greatest thing I earned was your trust. Rylan placed his hand on the dragon's injured claw. And you earned mine. As the crowd cheered and lights flashed, the old dragon closed his eyes, finally allowing himself to rest. There was no fear in the room anymore. Only respect. Respect fully earned.